Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to build an emergency computer replacement in case your laptop computer simply doesn't work or your desktop computer doesn't work. This computer can also be a light LAN gaming rig in case someone wants to join in on the fun. Now let's get into building the desktop PC.
I'm just going to install the CPU. So you have to open up this latch so that it can release the socket. Next, we're going to have to get the CPU. It's an AMD Athlon 64, rated at 3200 plus megahertz, which is the rated speed. The golden pin over here is going to align with this corner over here. So you don't need to apply any force, just place the CPU and wiggle it until it goes into the holes. And just put down this latch. You have now installed your CPU. Now, the reason why I've set up the motherboard here instead of installing it into the desktop case right away is because it's going to be harder to install the heatsink, the CPU heatsink, and the memory when you try and install them in the desktop case. Next, we are going to install the CPU heatsink. Now, the CPU heatsink draws heat away from the CPU to keep the CPU cool when it's running. Now, I'm just going to put the heatsink on because I'm actually using my phone to record this, so we're going to have to go ahead and do the next step. In order to install the CPU heatsink, you see these two latches here and here? The trigger latch, which is over here, has to be installed last. So we're going to have to put the right clip on first and then put the other clip on second. Now, in order to secure the CPU heatsink to the motherboard, we need to turn this latch around, making sure that it doesn't come off of the motherboard, and we just push it in this direction. And the CPU heatsink is now secured. Next, we are going to install the memory chips. Now, these memory chips are DDR, so just to let you know, the clips here need to be released so that I can insert the memory chips. Now, I'm just going to show you the memory chip. The notch, which is over here, has to line up with the notch on the motherboard. If you can see that properly, I'm not really sure if you can. I'll just insert the memory chips in, and we'll go to the next step. Now, in order to insert the memory chip properly, you're going to have to use your two thumbs. I can't really use my left one because I'm holding my phone to record this video. Now, you're going to have to use your two thumbs on both ends, which is the left side as well, and the right side as well, and you want to push very gently, but just enough force so you can insert the memory chip, and you should hear a click. So I'll just go to the next step. Next, I'm going to show you how to install the power supply. This power supply is has 400 watts of power capacity, and it has 18 amps 12 volt, 40 amps 5 volt, and 28 amps 3.3 volt. Now, in order to install this power supply into the desktop case, you need 4 desktop case screws, and I'm going to show you how to install the power supply right now. Power supply needs to be put in this orientation. So just going to slide the power supply into the desktop case right now. And 2 desktop case screws have to be screwed in this hole and this hole to make sure that the power supply is seated in place. I'll just screw in all the other screws and continue to the next step. This desktop case is not the exact same one which I provided in the video description, so I was just using it as a test desktop case for this build. Now, in order to get the motherboard screwed onto the desktop case, we need to screw in some standoffs to make sure that the motherboard is screwed onto the desktop case. Now, this is a standoff, and I included the standoffs in the video description in case you didn't get any standoffs from the desktop case that I gave you in the video description, or if you really need some standoffs and you don't have any at the moment. Now, in order to screw these motherboard to the desktop case, we're going to have to use some desktop case screws. In the video description, you'll find these screws being sold for about $3. So if there isn't any screws included in the desktop case, which is also included in the video description, you'll be able to get a pack of 25 of these screws. Now, I'm just going to show you how to screw in the desktop case screws so that you can get the motherboard in properly. Now, to screw it in, you're going to have to go clockwise. So I'm just screwing it in clockwise. Now, don't squeeze it too tight. You just gotta squeeze it enough so that it won't move when you apply a little bit of pressure. And you're done. Next step we are going to do is install the graphics card. But before I do that, I want to show you what it looks like. This is the ATI Radeon 9550 graphics card. This is apparently a DDR2 edition. You see that the memory isn't really DDR, it's actually DDR2. And this graphics card also has 256 megabytes of video memory. So basically, if you overclock the core clock of this graphics card really high, you should expect to get around 800 by 600 resolutions at decent frame rates on medium. But the only shader model this card really supports is shader model 2.0. So you won't be playing any of the more latest games, but you can probably play TF2 on it. So oh, and this card is also an 128-bit card, so it's got double the bandwidth plus DDR2, which is a great addition for our build. We are going to install the graphics card. So we just need to align this panel and put it behind the left of the motherboard. So we just need to do that. Once it's in that position, we need to see if you can see here. See this clip over here? All you have to do is push this end down and it should clip into place. Oh, sorry there, I didn't actually show you it, but as you can see, it's clipped into place. So all we need to do now is seat the graphics card into the slot. And that is the graphics card installed. Next we are going to secure the graphics card to the desktop case. So all I need to do is to put the screw in and screw it clockwise. Just need to make sure that the metal plate on the graphics card is under the screw when I'm screwing it onto the case. And I'm done. Next we are going to install the hard drive. There is two slots over here for the hard drive bays, but for the desktop case linked in the video description, they're going to look different from this. So I'm going to install the hard drive now using two desktop case screws. Now I'm just going to show you the orientation of this hard drive. As you can see, I've screwed the screws in and the hard drive is in place. You're going to have this side of the hard drive facing the motherboard so that you can connect the hard drive to the IDE to SATA adapter, which is also included in the video description. We are now going to connect the hard drive to the IDE to SATA adapter in the next step. Now the reason why we're going to use an IDE to SATA adapter to connect it to the hard drive is because this motherboard has SATA connections which are incompatible with Windows 7 or Windows XP. So I tried to get those SATA inputs to work, but I had to install some drivers to the Windows XP or Windows 7 installation, and that didn't work out for me. So we're just going to use this IDE to SATA adapter. So I'm just going to plug that into the blue connector on the motherboard. Now we are going to connect well, you can't really see it from here, but the left SATA connector says below it SATA is equal or greater than. No, it actually says IDE is equal or greater than SATA hard drive. So we just need to connect the SATA cable to this first connector. Next we have to connect the other end of the SATA cable to the hard drive. Hard drive has a small connector, a 7-pin connector, so we're going to connect this to the 7-pin connector. Next we are going to connect the power cable to the hard drive so that it turns on when we turn the computer on. I'm just going to get the SATA power cable. So here's the SATA power cable. We're going to connect that to the hard drive also. Now that we have connected the hard drive, we now need to power the adapter, because the adapter needs power in order to send data to and from the hard drive and the motherboard. So I'm just going to have to get the connector that powers it, and this is attached to the power supply already, so you don't really need any adapters for it. This Burge connector is going to power this IDE to SATA adapter. Now we have power. Now let's proceed to the next step. Next we are going to connect the 20-pin power cable to the motherboard. So I'll just do that now. So if you do some neat cable management, you should be able to have a tidy desktop PC setup. Now just make sure that the clip is clipped on to the clip on the motherboard connector so that it attaches properly. Now we are going to connect the 4-pin auxiliary connector to the motherboard. Now it's the same for this connector. You need to align the clip on this auxiliary connector to the clip on the motherboard, where actually there is no clip. It's just a something that keeps it attached to the motherboard. Now we can proceed to the next step. Now in order to get front desktop audio, we are going to have to connect this. We're going to have to connect this 9-pin audio cable, which looks like this, and we're going to connect it to this red connector, and we have to align the pins to that connector properly. So I'm just going to connect it now. Next, we are going to get the power switch to work. So in order for that to work, we need to connect the power button connector to the motherboard. So over here it says power button, and that is the top 2 pins which are on the top top right orientation of this connector. So we need to have these letters facing towards you when you connect it. So I'm just going to connect it now. Now the power button is good. Now we need to set up the speaker so that it tells you if the computer has turned on successfully. Now we need to have the words facing towards you. So we just need to connect that to the speaker port on the motherboard. Now the power button connections and the speaker connections will be different for different motherboards, so please check the user manual for on how to connect these connections properly. Now we have the power button and the front port audio connectors ready for the computer to use. Now we'll proceed to the next step. Now we have successfully installed the motherboard, the graphics card, the power supply, the hard drive which is behind this metal plate, and all the connections we need to turn the computer on and power it on. But before we do that, we need to put the metal plate here, and we need to slide it back onto the case. So I'm just going to do that. And then we need to secure the plate using 2 screws here and here. And after that, I'll show you how to connect the power cable and all the necessary cables needed to get a screen onto your monitor. Now, in order to turn on the computer properly, we need to make sure that this power switch is in the off position. When the circle is down, that is the off position, and when the line is down, that is the on position. So we need that off before we connect the power cable, so that we don't cause any damage to the power supply or the computer itself. So I'm just going to connect the power cable now. Now we can turn the power supply on. Next, we are going to connect the VGA cable into the VGA port, which is this port, on the graphics card. So I'll just do that now. Now, in order to connect the mouse and keyboard to the PS2 connections, we need to connect the keyboard color-coded purple into the purple color-coded port on the motherboard. I'm just going to connect that now. Now, only connect the PS2 connections for the keyboard and mouse if you only have a PS2 mouse and keyboard. You can either use USB keyboard and mouse. That's not included in the video description, so you're going to have to find one from some local IT shop, or you can get them from other retailers if you're familiar with them, or any hardware store. Now I'm just going to connect these PS2 connections for the PS2 connections, and we now have connected all the connectors we need to power the computer on. This is called a power on self-test, which the motherboard does to make sure that the computer is ready to run operating systems such as Windows XP, Windows 98 if you want to use that operating system for some very specific programs which are very old. You can also put Windows 7 on it, but you're going to have to use a DVD version of Windows 7, otherwise it just won't work. So the next step, I'm going to test to see if this computer works. Now I'm just going to use this keyboard to get to the BIOS. The BIOS is the basic input-output system, and the BIOS is used to boot operating systems from CD drives, which you can use to install Windows XP or Windows 7. There is other alternatives which I have found from Linus Tech Tips on his channel. So he has a Windows 7 tutorial for installing Windows 7 from a USB flash drive. But for this computer, it doesn't actually support booting from USB devices all that well. So we're going to use a CD. If you're going to use a CD drive, you're going to have to get one from eBay or someone like that and install it into your computer. Now we are going to turn this computer on and go to the basic input-output system. And when I do this, it will give me a graphical user interface which will allow me to use this keyboard to navigate through all the devices used on this computer system, as well as other settings, which will allow you to customize how your computer starts up. So I'm just going to turn the computer on using the power button, and I'm going to keep the phone on the screen. I'm going to turn on the computer now. I'm going to hold F10. Well, actually I'm going to hold ESC, and then I'm going to press F2. No, that didn't work. I'm going to have to press Control-Alt-Delete to restart the computer. Then I'm going to hold F2 and keep it hold until I get to the basic input-output system. We are now at the basic input-output system, the BIOS, and from here we can change what device we want to boot from, we want to boot from the CD drive. So in order to do this, we need to go to the Boot tab, and we need to go to Boot Device Priority. We need to go to the first boot device, and we want to change this to the CD/DVD drive or something similar. So when you do this, you'll be able to put your Windows XP installation disk or Windows 7 installation disk and follow the on-screen instructions. And to do this, you're going to have to go to the Exit tab and Save Changes. And that's about it for this tutorial. Leave a comment if you want to make any suggestions about this video, or if you just like to talk about a few things. Leave a like if you liked it, leave a dislike if you disliked it, and if you want to see more videos from me, just click subscribe, and I might put some videos after this one. And thank you very much for watching.